Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're at. Thank you for joining the Life Course Research Network webinar made possible by funding from the Maternal and Child Health Bureau. I'm Neal, Halfon. I'm the director of the UCLA Center for Healthier Children, Families, and Communities, and I'm a professor here in public health and pediatrics and public policy. Today, I'm co-hosting our second webinar in our series, Measuring Health Development of Children and Youth, with my colleague Lisa Stanley, who's the project director of our Transforming Early Childhood Community System. This webinar series we've co-developed with our colleagues at the Human Early Learning Partnership at the University of British Columbia. And it's a series that is aimed to bring into wider appreciation a set of measurement tools that have been developed and utilized and deployed in Canada and Australia, and now the US, that are really aimed at being able to better measure the health and development of children and their well-being across the lifespan or across the child span, and provide different kinds of information so that we can begin to look at the trajectories of children and create different kind of information that is more useful for communities as they move forward with attempting various kinds of strategies to improve health and development. In our first webinar in the series, we spent some time learning about the background of the early development instrument, the EDI. Today, we'll be exploring how the EDI has been implemented in cities throughout the U.S. and about how it has enabled the collective work in improvement of early childhood systems, programs, and policies. We are also joined by a set of panelists today that this is not working. By a set of panelists today, we're having a few technical difficulties. I'm sorry. Are you sure this is working? Mm-hmm. Okay. And the panelists today who are joining us are from our partner sites in San Antonio, Hartford, Connecticut, Spartanburg, and Pasadena. Just a few quick technical comments before we begin. During the presentation, all participants will be muted, but as a precaution, please be sure that your phone or microphone is in mute mode. Following the presentations, we'll have a follow-up activity and discussion for which you may use the raise the hand function to participate. If you would like to submit a question, please do so using the chat function. We'll read it out loud. Unfortunately, if you've joined our webinar by phone only, the system will not allow you to unmute you for the discussion. If you would like to ask a question or contribute, please email us at lcrn at lcrn.net. I need to have control of this.
You have it now. I think you have it now.
Huh? All right. And just before I get started, I wanted to, you won't be able to see this very well on your screen. We've sent this out, but this is just the second in a whole series of webinars that we're doing about the EDI and the MDI and the ways that these instruments can be used around community engagement and development. Part of what this whole approach is about developing a human developmental systems approach to looking at developmental trajectories, creating better interventions in community systems where we're able to take the science social emotional well-being, neurodevelopment, and be able to apply it in ways that affect communities. And so we're trying to understand what are the differences that make a difference, and also understand that when we have no data, there's no problem and therefore no action. The measurement tools that we're looking at really cover the child span, and today we'll be talking about the EDI, but the other measures that will be talked about during the series include the TDI, which is under development, the CHECK, which is a measurement tool that's used for children at age 5, but looks at the first 5 years of life. The EDI we'll talk about today. In our next webinar, we'll be talking about the MDI, and the YDI will also be something that we'll refer to that's down the line. This whole measurement series or measurement set begin to provide a way for us to look at trajectories in children. So today what we'll be focusing on is the EDI and its background and rollout in the US, what the EDI results tell us, and how communities are using the EDI with the discussion and questions. Just to give some context for our discussion, the importance of early childhood experience, exposures, and relationships for lifelong health and development and well-being has been very well established scientifically now. We know that the health and economic and social consequences of failing to meet these needs of young children and their families, again, being reiterated and well accepted. The difficulty of achieving societal goals of health or social equity without achieving equity from the start has also begun to be more widely appreciated. So the importance of early childhood, the consequences of not achieving that, and the importance of equity from the start. The early childhood crisis that is underway in our country and in many parts of the world has a lot to do with nearly half of young children grow up in low-income families where we know they don't have the resources that they need to actually thrive. And a large proportion are not ready for school. And meaning that when you're not ready for school because of how much early childhood matters, it means that they're not going to be ready for life. And so the other challenge we find is that young children are largely invisible. While we have data at present at birth, like infant mortality and low birth weight rates, and we have data that is collected universally at 3rd grade in most states. Between birth and 3rd grade, there's no universal data collection on the population, so up until recently, these children have been invisible. Our social strategies necessary to support young children are lacking. Most countries around the world that are doing far better than the United States have 3 social strategies: healthcare for all. They have early care and education that is not just preschool, but is much more extensive, beginning oftentimes at birth. And they also have a 3rd leg of the stool, which is family support. And all 3 of those social strategies are important. In the United States, we have very little family support, and we tend to shove family support into our preschools and into our doctor's offices since we don't have those freestanding on their own. The information systems that our nation have or are developing don't exist in the U.S., and all the technical innovations and improvement, including the range of early childhood innovations, will have little impact if there's no social strategy to support them and no data to be able to measure what's going on. And we know that the most effective early childhood policies and strategies are those that are universal, population-focused, measurable, and that promote resilience. So these are some of the logic and strategies around why we need to be doing better data collection. Well, there are many bright spots in the United States where we're seeing place-based, multi-sector, eco-focused kinds of interventions that are adopting a complex adaptive systems approach to thinking about what needs to take place. They combine individual and population level curve shifting strategies. They focus on equity from the start and have common explanatory models that work all sectors, all levels, and all participants, and use common measures, efforts, and integrate strategies. So laying out here a set of things that are going very well in certain places, and we think that these things, focusing on equity from the start, shifting curves, having common explanatory models, using common measures, are all key elements of these places that are doing well. And most of the focus of the work that we've done is really focused on these trajectories and what we do to improve these trajectories, realizing that kids that go into a high trajectory have these protective factors. Many of these protective factors focus on families, building parental resilience and social connections. And what they try to counteract is the effect of poverty and other kinds of exposures. So it's how do we get kids into this highest trajectory? And part of doing that and being able to manage trajectories is being able to have data systems that actually can measure these trajectories. And during this webinar series, we'll be talking about TDI and CHECK, and today we're talking about the EDI as a kindergarten entry measure. The EDI is a population-focused measure. It provides neighborhood-level results that allow for place-based focus. It's not focusing on the individual child and used for individual high-stakes decision-making. It also creates school-level results that allow the education sector to focus in a different way. It's a holistic measure. It measures the whole child in 5 developmental domains and 16 subdomains. So it allows for a whole child, whole family, whole community kind of approach. It's feasible to implement at scale and collected once every 3 years by kindergarten teachers because it's being used not to necessarily make individual interventions in the lives of children, but really into making interventions in the ecosystem of communities, and doing this every 3 years and making changes and then reevaluating this as a strategy that is evolved using the EDI. It's user-friendly, and there's an online observational assessment, and it's based on teacher recall. It's kindergarten teachers filling the EDI out after the child has been in the kindergarten for 3 months. It's not done when they walk in the door because the assessment requires knowledge of the child and knowledge of their social emotional function and cognitive function in that kindergarten environment. It was developed at McMaster's University in Canada. It's been successfully used in over 15 countries. It's now a national indicator in Australia. It's used almost across the entire country of Canada. It has very strong reliability and validity, and it predicts later standardized test scores. I show this from some work we've recently done with Greg Duncan in some of the EDI data in Orange County. And what you see that those children who are vulnerable and at risk, as opposed to those who are on track, what we see in each domain, it strongly predicts how the child will do on math scores or on reading scores at 3rd grade. And there's data from Canada and Australia that show the same, but this is from the United States data from Orange County. The population focus allows for a community snapshot of children's healthy development and school readiness. It informs place-based efforts to optimize healthy development of all young children. And as such, the results are used to look back to help efforts to prepare children, meaning looking back before they get to school, and also looking forward to offer an ability of schools to think about how they prepare and for children as they move forward. Just lost the slides for some reason. We'll be bringing them back up.
Just the one Emily is in the folder.
Yeah. Circle one. That one. Bear with us just for a second. We're trying to get the slides back up. So hopefully you can all see them again. And so the developmental domains of the EDI include communication skills, the ability to use language and communicate needs and understand. There's language and cognitive development in terms of abilities with reading, writing, and numbers and shapes, emotional maturity, including emotional well-being and various measures of children's emotional response, social competence, and physical health and well-being. And when we measure this, we can sort of look at, for any child or any population, where the strengths and weaknesses are. This is not changing. There are 16 developmental subdomains of the EDI, and you can see them there. Physical readiness, physical independence. I won't go through all of these, but you can see them there. We've been doing the EDI now since 2009 in the United States in all these different places. There are over 77 communities in 15 states. The map here shows all the communities that have been part of this effort. And though it may not look as if we're going on much in the West Coast, there's a lot of effort now going on in California. In fact, we've done all of the children in Orange County, and we're now in a second wave of data collection there. And Los Angeles is now in the process of doing the entire county of Los Angeles. Washington, D.C. is also one of the places where we're now on the second wave of data collection. And in New York City, there are several pilot sites, which we're hoping will continue to move forward. And this effort is supported by our UCLA Center. We have a whole support team, including a train-the-trainer toolkit. There's online EDI software for help teachers be trained, data analysis and visualization support, and consultation on how to use the EDI to leverage systems improvement in communities. And one of the people that's not on there is Pat Bowie, who's a member of our team as well. Now, just quickly to provide some sense of the results that we have thus far, just to give you a sense of where we've progressed. These are the number of children that have had the EDI done in the United States. So there are, at this point, over 300,000 children have had the measure. From the population that we have measured in the United States, as you can see, that 12% are African American, 6% Asian, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islanders, and 59% Hispanic, 19% white, 5% others. So you see that our population is a bit skewed, and part of that is that our sites are also skewed towards many more low-income sites, so twice as many low-income and over twice as many Hispanic children have been part of that 300,000 kids. As we look at the results in our national sample, we can look at what percent of children are vulnerable or at risk or becoming vulnerable or on track. So these three levels, vulnerable, at risk for becoming vulnerable, and on track, is what one way that it's reported out. The technical and lay definitions of these terms are listed in the first two rows there. And the last row tells us that for our national sample, only 50% of the children are on track across all 5 of the EDI developmental domains. This is just an average, and at the community level, this ranges in communities for in some communities, only 17% of the kids are on track, up to 77% of the kids on track. So there's quite a significant variation across communities. The next slide is just a slide showing very quickly some of what can be done with the EDI. This is just showing vulnerability in one domain or another. It shows that you have as high in as 35% of the children being vulnerable, and then down to around 15%. And this is looking broken down by race and by income. So at the left-hand side, you're seeing the lowest income quintile. At the right-hand side, the highest income. So what you're seeing here is a rather significant social gradient, and the social gradient is quite different for different racial and ethnic groups. And again, this allows the EDI to be used as a really important measure of equity, of health equity, social equity in communities as well. The EDI results are mapped so that we're mapping them to measure as a measure of kindergarten age child development by their neighborhood and the indicators and assets that we're showing in relationship. So here's the map of Fullerton, California. The more vulnerable the population, the darker the color, the darkest green is the highest percentage of children that are vulnerable. And what it does is it helps city level and neighborhood level stakeholders engage in understanding where the needs are the greatest using data for planning and for action. The next two slides are also from Fullerton, California, but look at two specific developmental domains. So this is for all, and what you see is for very specific domains. This is the physical health domain, and the next one is looking at social competence. And what we see in each case, the distributions are different, and it has significant implications for the kind of resources that exist and the kind of correctives that might be done in each of these places. This last three slides are to give you some examples of the type of indicators that communities select to look at in relation to the EDI to support community conversations about the underlying drivers of child development. This is the map of Spartanburg, South Carolina. You'll be hearing more from them during the panel. They've had us overlay violent crime rates in Spartanburg. We find that in some cases a map like this will help to engage criminal justice sector or on the early childhood development, just the same way as overlaying data on housing and housing insecurity can bring the housing sector in, on transportation and the like. So plotting other data allow for the early childhood table to be set with other players at that table to bring them into the conversation as well. In this, we see El Monte, California, at percent of children meeting third grade reading proficiency, again, in relationship to what is also the EDI scores there. And here we see a zoom in Washington, D.C. to Ward 7, and it's mapping assets to get a sense of the extent to which there are ample resources in the community. Here we're looking at parks and rec, libraries, grocery stores, and others in relationship to the vulnerability in that those neighborhoods. Lastly, we've been partnering with Charlie Bruner and the Neighborhood Risk Index that they've developed to really look at the nature of adversity in the community. This graph shows 10 indicators that constitute this index. in terms of giving a sense of the positive indicators as well as negative indicators of a community. And here what we've done is we're looking at the map of Fullerton again, but here what we've done is overlaid EDI results with the neighborhood risk index results. And the gray areas are areas where that are shaded to show that the neighborhoods are exactly what would be expected, meaning they're high neighborhood risk index and lots of vulnerability, or low neighborhood index and low vulnerability. Difference is the orange areas where the neighborhoods are not doing as well as would be expected. So these are off diagonal, in which you have negative deviance, and the blue areas are those where children are doing developmentally much better than would be expected. This is positive deviance. And this negative and positive deviance, this off diagonal, is really, really important because it starts to allow us to have different kinds of conversations to understand the underlying drivers of what in these communities is leading for children to do better or worse than expected. It's also helping policymakers to see that their efforts are making a difference, so that things that are being done in some of these blue areas are showing a different response. So let me hand over the microphone to my colleague Lisa Stanley, who will take from here and talk about how the EDI is being used for change.
Great. I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Hi, everyone. This is Lisa Stanley, and I'm very excited to be part of this webinar. I know that a lot of our communities that have participated in EDI are listening in, but there's a lot of you I haven't met. So I've been working since the pilot, since 2007, to pilot and bring the EDI here, and working with our great team to support communities around the country. So we can kind of shift gears now from some of the background and history and context of the EDI to actually hearing how communities are using the EDI at various levels, whether it be county, city, neighborhood, program, school, etc. And before I introduce the panelists, I'm really excited that we've got some wonderful communities and partners to share with you today. I'll just give a few framing comments and a few resources to get more information. Neal mentioned earlier in terms of the background of the EDI that it's used from two really different vantage points, because it's a snapshot during the kindergarten year of the entire population in the community, how children are doing developmentally. It can be used as a benchmark to look back, or it can be used as a baseline to look forward. And so this table here is kind of helping us understand some of the fundamental differences. When a community is looking at the data from a looking back perspective, they're looking at those community maps that Neal showed you that show you how children are doing where they live. And that becomes public data. It's used across the entire community with all members of the community across sectors to reflect back and to say, how can we do better to prepare children before they get to school, to take the onus of school readiness off the backs of the school system. And so in that context, when you hear from the panelists, you'll be hearing how they use that data to engage broad sectors of the community, to better understand their neighborhoods as a catalyst to strengthen those partnerships, and to inform a variety and different types and levels of planning, investment, and action. And once communities are able to establish multiple waves to look at how children are doing at wave 1, and then 3 years later at wave 2, communities can start to monitor that progress over time at a community level. That's the looking back piece. The looking forward really is the education sector. Primarily, we see school districts and education policymakers taking their school level reports and maybe coupling those with the neighborhood maps, but really looking at how children are doing within their own schools. And with that as a baseline, using that data to support children as they move through the school years, kindergarten, first, second, third grade. We're hearing and talking to school district administrators, principals, and superintendents about various work they're doing with the school reports, primarily in the areas of informing professional development, engaging parents and parent councils to inform local education plans, informing curriculum development, bringing teachers together across years, across preschool, kindergarten, first grade, third grade, second grade, to have a conversation about early development and school transition and articulation. So there's some very actionable things that schools are able to do in terms of using this data to improve a variety of school curriculum, policies, and planning, and also to look at the early education within the school context. So this is just a kind of a broad framework for how communities are using the data to look back and look forward. It's always used to engage and inform and to monitor, but you may have really different partners depending on whether it's looking back or looking forward. I think that the panelists you may hear from today may have more examples to share with you in the looking back piece, but it may warrant another webinar, of course, because there are many examples also of how school districts themselves are using the data. Next slide. So the next two slides we'll just go through really quickly, but if you're really interested in getting some implementation guidance around EDI in the United States, this second website here, the UCLA website listed as text.net, has a lot of the kind of practical logistical tools and resources that we give to communities in the United States who are implementing the EDI. The last website on this slide is how sites across the country can exchange information with each other. So it's a group site where you can talk to the whole community. So that's what we call our EDI Learning Exchange group site. The next slide is just to give you some websites for other communities using the EDI. It's by no means comprehensive. It includes some of the websites of the panelists that you'll hear from today, but it's not necessarily all of their websites even. They may be giving you some more during their presentations, but certainly some communities have posted their results. Others have posted tools about how parents are using the data. Others have created online interactive data portals, such as Hartford's Connecticut Data Collaborative. So there's just a lot of really innovative things going on. My last slide is just to have the pleasure of introducing our panelists today. And I really do want to thank them for taking the time to prepare and to share with you. They'll each take about 10 minutes today, more or less, to share with you why they chose to bring the EDI to their community, how they've used the results, and maybe some of the things that they found to be the most successful or the most challenging in this work. We'll go in this order if that works for everyone still. So we'll start off in Texas with Casey McCormick, and she's the Vice President of Grants at the United Way of San Antonio and Bexar County. And then we'll move to Hartford, Connecticut, and there's a team that will present from different perspectives of the work in Connecticut and in Hartford. So you'll hear from Richard Sussman, Joyce Bosco, Susan Sarmiento, and Maritza Rivera. And then in South Carolina, you have Elizabeth Thompson. And finally, we'll hear from Pasadena, California, Crystal O'Grady. So I know they each have some of their own slides that we'll be managing from our end so that we don't have to do lots of screen sharing back and forth. But Casey, I see it looks like you're ready to go. And Whitney, you can bring up Casey's slides when you're ready. Casey, I'll hand it over to you. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. And once we get the slides up, I'll always speak to them, but I just want to address the question of how we got involved with EDI from the beginning. In San Antonio, we are fortunate and unfortunate to have 17 different school districts, which is great because it provides a great variety, but it's also sometimes a little bit of growing pains because the work that we do is not conducive to working with multiple districts and gaining access to multiple data systems and just really making sure that everything is aligned and collaborative. And so when we found the EDI, what's now been 9 years ago, it really was a tool that we thought not only could address this issue of every district using different assessments, but would also give us the population level data we were looking for because so many tools were often looking at just the individual child. So we actually found this tool. We started working with it through some of our state partners and with UCLA. And then what came out of that is really what I'm going to speak to today, because I think it's really important that through using the EDI and through the tool and the data that comes from it, we were able to develop this great systems change work that's happening in San Antonio. So as you see on the screen, Ready Kid SA is a development from multiple projects, including the EDI. We found that when we were collecting data and we had a lot of different early childhood groups meeting, but nobody was really coordinating systems. So we brought them all together to make sure that families and resources were able to connect in the right place. So there's our website on there, and that everything for children 0 to 8 was in one place, and that we would make sure that we were measuring if children were healthy and happy and ready all in one place, and that we were all measuring in a unified approach instead of different data and assessments everywhere. If you'll go to the next slide, please. And the big thing that came out of that is our overarching happy, healthy, ready children as our result. And if you'll go to the next slide. And what we did was we took our map of Bexar County. So you'll see that Bexar County is pretty large. Again, 17 school districts. We just wrapped up our 8th year of data collection last year. And with those 7 years of data collection, with those 7 years of data collection, we have 8 of our 17 school districts on board. But the good thing about that is we have over 70% of all kinder students captured. So we have about 25,000 kinder students every year, and we're hitting anywhere between 17 and 19 to 20 with this assessment with those 8 school districts, and we're always looking to add more. So as we move forward, we're going to continue to add school districts and continue to use the EDI assessment every year until we have a full capture of what Bexar County looks like on the EDI. When we first got this data, we really wanted to make sure it was digestible to the community, and I think that was pretty crucial to bringing any kind of tool in. So what we did year 1 is we took it out to our local high schools, and we said, here's what our map looks like. Here's what, as Dr. Halfon just mentioned, the darker the green means the higher the vulnerability for the kids in that area. The lighter the green means those kids are maybe doing a little bit better. So what does this mean to you if you look at this map? And we took it to high school kids who traditionally aren't looking at a ton of data, and we said, how would you interpret this? And they said, well, I interpret it as I went to childcare, and you just overlaid a childcare center, and I know the kids that are coming from that area are doing pretty well because they're light green. And then another girl stepped in and said, I didn't go to childcare, I went straight to kindergarten, and here's where I live, and here's where I went to school, and they're not doing very well right there. So does that mean that there's not a lot of kids in childcare? And they understood it. They understood the connection, they understood the prevention angle, they understood why this is in place, and we figured, okay, if high school students who are not super invested in early childhood education can get this, we can make sure this is accessible to the community and make sure that parents are understanding it, that our local city community is understanding it, that businesses are understanding it, that it really can go for a variety of audiences. And then we started taking it a step further with our local data partner and said, what can we overlay with this data? This is great data that we have in our hands. What can we do to make sure that our investments at United Way are really making a difference where they need to be, and how can we get other communities on board, other community partners on board for the same thing? So local foundations, the city, how can we look at it? So we overlaid everything from child abuse to healthcare clinics to adult education rates. We look at our individual grants and overlay where outreach and where program enrollment is occurring to make sure we're really addressing the right areas. Some of our school districts have requested things like our transportation routes. They've overlaid bus routes and bus stops to then take it to City Hall and advocate for additional bus stops because they were finding that kids were often absent or late for school based on this data. So we really took it and ran with it. And then if you'll go to the next slide, you'll see how it really changed what's happening in our community. So you saw the 3 results, happy, healthy, ready. This is our final scorecard that came with 6 months of a visioning process with 70 different partners around the room meeting weekly for 4 hours a week. They really came down and said, this is what we want for kids in San Antonio and Bexar County. And the great thing is, out of the 9 indicators listed under the 3 results, 2 of them specifically involved EDI. So that was a huge win for us to see that not only did we feel that it was really important to have EDI on here, our community saw that as well. And they really wanted to make sure that it was ingrained in everything we do. And if you'll go to the next slide. And then if you keep hitting it, I think you can hit it 3 times on this one. There you go. And if you look where it's blue, so that's where it's highlighted that EDI is in our overall work. But if you see what's circled in orange, that's now where there's funding behind this work. So United Way invested in the last year $5 million of funding in RFPs based on what you see circled. So we took this scorecard that was for the community. We said, we're going to put out RFPs around it. One of them is one of the EDI domains. You'll see it under Result 3, that assessing the children that are vulnerable in 4 or more EDI domains. And we put out RFPs based on this data. So not only were we putting out the data publicly on our website, not only were we sharing it with the community in every meeting that we possibly could, but now we're saying we're going to fund based on what we see happening, because we know that this tool is so powerful to look back and, as Lisa and Neal mentioned, look forward and make sure that we have all of the right prevention and intervention angles in place to make sure kids are successful. And if you'll go to the final slide, please. And this is pretty hot off the press, but I'm excited to say, now this is the City of San Antonio funding. So we created this great scorecard, United Way funded based on it, and then the City of San Antonio stepped up and said, you know, we're going to put at least $5 to $10 million in the same work that you all are doing. And if you'll see, the 2 EDI indicators that are on here are circled. So there's now at least $15 million of funding behind this scorecard work, behind 2 indicators really focused on EDI. And really a lot of this conversation started 8-9 years ago when we brought EDI as a tool to say, what's going on in our community? How do we look at prevention? How do we take this look back? How do we take the onus off of kinder teachers who are getting kids from all different angles? You know, it's not on them that kids aren't prepared. How do we make sure that whatever's happening before they even get to that classroom, that they're prepared, they're ready, they're emotionally on track, and that the parents are ready to help that child succeed? So we're really proud of what's come out of this work. We look forward to continuing to enhance our EDI work. And as I mentioned, you know, we're building towards getting every single school district on board, and we'll continue to collect annually until we get to that point.
Very much. Thanks very much, Nancy. Let's move on.
Great. So next up, we have the Connecticut team and Richard Sussman. Richard, did you want to start off for your group?
Will do. That'd be great.
Okay. Thanks.
So good afternoon and welcome to everyone from the snowy Northeast. I'm Rich Sussman, the Director of Early Childhood Investments at the Hartford Foundation. And the foundation has supported the implementation of EDI in Hartford and associated neighborhood conversations in 5 communities in our region. My plan is to tell you why we did this. My colleague Joyce Fesco will tell you how we did this. 2 of our active community participants, Susan Samriento and Maritza Rivera, will describe their engagements with the EDI, and we'll conclude with our collective thoughts about our challenges and successes. Related to this slide, the Foundation's involvement with UCLA and the EDI began in 2014 under our 25-year, $25 million investment in early childhood called Brighter Futures, and has continued under our current strategic plan as a critical component of our birth to college education strategy. The Foundation chose to support implementation of EDI for 7 reasons that are listed here. 1, as a strategy to engender neighborhood conversations between residents, community providers, educators, and others about the importance of healthy development and school readiness. 2, to promote a whole child perspective, which we thought was missing in our area. 3, to design and improve our community supports for young children and families. 4, as a strategy to increase parent and resident participation in neighborhoods and in schools. 5, as a tool for measuring our progress in supporting young children and families. 6, as a strategy to highlight areas where professional development may be needed for teachers or others who work in our schools. And lastly, as important data that could be used to support applications for state and national grants. I want to pass the baton on to my colleague Joyce now, who will tell you how we tried to accomplish these 7 things that are listed here. And I'll be back.
Hi everyone, this is Joyce Bosco, and I'm the Family and Community Engagement Specialist. One of the things we're going to talk about first is how we really engage grassroots community in this process. So that's what I'm going to speak to you mostly about. One of the things is that we began this work by really understanding the context by which we were doing this work. So what we said to ourselves is, how can we bring this data to the Hartford community in such a way that they will actually find ways to use this data and activate change. And we particularly, in the phase that I was involved with, we're looking at engaging residents and parents in this process. So we wanted to think about who are our existing partners that are already ready to engage partners and activate them as trusted messengers in this work. So one of the strategies we used was to train parents in how to host community cafes. And one of the reasons we use that is we found that as a great vehicle to begin the discussion about EDI, using EDI results as a call to action. But what we thought was really important is that we just don't bring this data out to communities, because especially in communities that have felt marginalized, haven't heard great things about themselves, we wanted to ensure that we brought the data out in a way that they would be able to use it and see hope in their communities. So one of the reasons we use the cafe model is it begins with a dream about their neighborhood. So what's your dream for children in your neighborhood? And then we move on to sharing the results. But we also talk to the parents and the residents about, you know, that they are the context experts in this work, and that we understand the numbers, but they understand the stories behind the numbers. So we wanted to respect them as the context expert, and we wanted to hear their perspective of why the vulnerabilities that we saw in the children in the neighborhood were happening. One of the things we did was to develop a user-friendly EDI book in English and Spanish. And this became a user-friendly way to present the EDI results to the community. So we had a series of community conversations about these results. And we found by the second cafe, they were thinking about who are the partners within the community that we can connect with to actually support the vision that the community had to move the results of the EDI results forward. So that's what we did. And then the third cafe was bringing those partners in to support the project. What was very important, then we provided mini grants programs to build community and partnership capacity to support these projects to enhance the school readiness of young children in the neighborhood. Because what we really wanted to do through these cafes wasn't just, it was also to build the cohesiveness of the neighborhood. Because we know that the cafe model is founded on the protective factors. So we wanted to ensure that we were also bringing people together with partners, maybe who hadn't sat in the same room together before, to think about creative and innovative ways to support the school readiness of children in their neighborhood. And we also partnered with community-based organizations because we found the backbone support that these organizations could provide to this process was vital to the success of the project. So now I'm going to introduce my friend and colleague, Susan Sarmiento, who did a lot of work in the community, engaging other parents into the community cafe process and helping them understand how they could support the children in school. Susan? Is she on? She told me she was on.
Brittany, can you tell if her phone is muted?
Can you
I
hear
can
me?
tell.
Yes.
Now we can, Susan. Now we can.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. So I really want to share about my experience about the action plan, and the beautiful pictures that you see create a beautiful story about our experience. This was a great opportunity for parents to grow and become leaders in their community and neighborhood. Taking action was so important for us as parents to take responsibility based on the information that we got from the EDI. And also for me personally, and for other parents, organically, we end sharing all this information that we got and make it our own and share within our community. And as we develop the action plan, all the pictures that you see there is events that we have done, like story walks, activities that we had with different agencies, the Hartford Public Library, family centers. And one of the experiences that I had that I remember so clear is developing activities with a couple of the parents on communication and physical well-being, and teaching parents how we create activities with items that they already have at home. They didn't have to spend a lot of money to do these activities. For example, you see the picture with the cups, and we bought those cups for like $5, and they loved it. The children were so engaged. Then we also went on and explained to them the importance of, like, for example, peeling an egg or peeling a tangerine, how that can help the children's development with the writing. So also being able to see parents being able to see how big agencies work, and they are cheering for their children, so they didn't feel alone, like they were doing all on their own. It was something that they were able to see, that they were working really hard, but also they were like the Harvard Foundation, they were working really hard towards this. And also a great experience working hand in hand with all these beautiful organizations that we had the opportunity to work with. And now I'm gonna I'm gonna introduce to Maritza Rivera from East Hartford.
Hello, everybody. So in East Hartford, we were thinking of ways and determining how we were going to be able to present this data in a way that, number one, would be easily understood by families, and explaining to them how it directly links to the student's success. And number two, how this data is not bad news. This is a way to see areas that our students are challenged in, as well as students that they show strength in. So with that, we created the EDI Kindergarten Olympics. This was a way for us to turn this data into something that was tangible, which was extremely important for us, and it was necessary in order for this dynamic to work, and also to focus in on the power of the relationship between parents and teachers. Right here, we have examples of some of our stations that would determine, you know, gross motor skills as well as fine motor skills, which were areas in which our students in this specific neighborhood really needed to work on. And modeling these behaviors with the parents as well as the students was awesome. It was a way to kind of bring in an easier explanation of what a gross motor skill is, or what a fine motor skill is, or how to explain social and emotional learning. And it was a great, and in the midst of it, nobody really understands that this is to help our students progress. The students just think that they're playing, and the parents also, they don't see it as, oh wow, my student's really struggling. It's more of, oh, my student is kind of having a hard time with skipping. How can I help them? And at the end of the EDI Olympics, they go home with actual tools and materials to help replicate these models at home. We started doing it last year in the spring, and the feedback we got was that the parents really wanted that information early on. So this year we decided to do it in the fall. It was a little bit chilly. Some schools did it outside, some did it inside, but it was a great feedback tool, because it's true. All of these tools can be used throughout the year to help with their student success and progression as far as the areas that they needed help with.
I think I'm gonna pull this back and just let you know that the foundation and its 5 program sites have found some of the greatest challenges. I think Lisa and Neal have asked us to talk a little bit about challenges and greatest outcomes in promoting the use of the EDI, to be that we've really had considerable competition, sort of exacerbated sometimes by state pressure, to promote other approaches to assess readiness and healthy development rather than the EDI. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. The second one has been that there's been a significant need to have on-the-ground organizational support to truly achieve a level of meaningful dialogue and engagement, so that the EDI can lead to change, as you heard by the last two presenters. Third, schools often exclusively focus on their students and do not attend so well to engaging parents in the process of educating their children. And lastly, teachers unfortunately often do not see the value of partnering with parents, and that has been a challenge for us. On the other hand, we've seen some amazing outcomes. We've really recognized and seen the utilization of the EDI as far more than an assessment tool. We're using the EDI as a vehicle to create a cadre of trusted, informed parent leaders who are going on to a number of other projects in their communities and across the state that we're very proud of them for. We've seen the outcome of applying this approach to enable parents to speak on behalf of many children and not just on their own, to really testify in front of their school board about the needs of all children in their community. And lastly, I think we've created a forum and a language where both parents and school personnel can talk the same language, share ideas, and jointly develop new strategies in a way that they have all found it to be incredibly useful. So they've been able to look backwards, as Lisa said, and be able to look forward, as we are hoping to do for all these kids, to make the best possible educational experience for them. So it's been a really remarkable time, and we're hoping to add 2 more communities to make that 7 in our region at the end of 2019. Thank you so much, UCLA.
Oh, great. Thank you so much to the Connecticut and Hartford team. Very exciting. And we also provided the website earlier to the Hartford Connecticut Data Collaborative, which is another exciting piece of your work. Next we have is from South Carolina. We get to hear from Elizabeth Beth Thompson, Director of Continuous Improvement with the Spartanburg Academic Movement. Beth, are you all, looks like your slides up and you're off mute, I hope. There you are.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can everyone hear me fine?
Yes, we hear you well.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, a lot of the things that we have found in our use of the EDI, you've already heard a lot about, because we sort of come to this tool and this work from similar places, not even knowing so. So I'll just tell you a little bit very briefly about how we came to use the EDI in Spartanburg. It's a very similar story, not quite 17 school districts, but we have 7 school districts in our county. And when we started thinking about cradle to career collective impact work, improving kindergarten readiness, we quickly realized that we pretty much had 7 different assessments of school readiness. Most of those were self-developed within the districts themselves without any real rigor to the tools. And the information was not shared beyond. It wasn't for the purpose of community type of improvement work. It was really for the purpose of the kindergarten teacher creating individual plans for the students and knowing where her students were so that she could deal with it and help them progress during the year. And that was just a very different need than what we were finding ourselves looking for. We had a community of early childhood experts that were really looking for information to say, how can we be a better system from that looking back approach? How can we prepare children better so that kindergarten teachers can pick up, more children will be ready, and they can be ready for success in future grades too. And that's what the EDI was able to provide us, which was different than what we had currently. We may be one of the newest communities. We received our countywide data in May of 2018. So we've sort of been in a pattern of sharing that information with our stakeholders and with communities. A couple of ways we've shared it with a large group of stakeholders that included a lot of funders that fund early childhood projects, the United Way, and local foundations, along with some folks from our business community and a lot of the leaders in the early childhood system. Just in August of this past year, one of our school district leaders was part of a larger meeting and wanted to take that information back to her school district. So although she had her school confidential report, she asked us to come in as an organization and share it with their early childhood providers in her specific geography area and of her 4K teachers as well. So we've been sharing that information. We're finding that it provides a really important and missing piece that we used to have, sort of a level setting language. So where now kindergarten readiness isn't this big secret in the community, to where folks are sort of wondering, people from all levels of education, socioeconomic status, when the tool before was used just for the teachers to have or based on the individual student, it was sort of like a game. Is my child going to be ready for school or not? What do they need to know? And we're finding that now that we have this tool in place and we have the results, we're able to really help bridge that gap between children that are coming in and their parents and the systems that they're growing up in and what schools are expecting as well in terms of readiness. So we're really happy about that. Again, it hasn't come without challenges. I think the folks in Hartford just mentioned, we are also dealing with some pretty political type of environment of State Department and other folks looking at other types of measurements of readiness, still thinking about it in terms of what does a kindergarten teacher need to be a kindergarten teacher. And so we implemented this in the midst of actually about 6 years in South Carolina of trying to implement a kindergarten readiness measure statewide. And we were already on the 4th choice for that when our local community decided to do this one. And we're starting to see a lot of folks looking at us to say the reading measure or the reading test that we did doesn't really tell us what we were hoping it would tell us, and they're starting to see that we have some really good information that can help us. I think when the webinar started, I heard no data, no problem, no change. And so that's sort of what the environment that we're working in, we were working in, but we're moving away from now that we have that. We've had some really good success already with using the information for change. Our local library system, for example, was able to pull their summer reading data for children 0 to 5. And they were able to see that actually in some of our most vulnerable communities, the darker areas on our map, that their branch libraries were reaching a significant proportion of the population of families with young children in those areas, but yet their vulnerabilities were still pretty great. So now they're able to start thinking about what other programming that they can provide that would support readiness based on this information, because they can already see that they're sort of a hub for those families. So they're thinking about their programming in that sense. We're also in the stage where we're using the information, not quite the parent cafe concept, but working with our local university to do more of an anthropology type study of a couple of our neighborhoods, because what it does tell us is what vulnerabilities may exist and where they exist, but it doesn't really tell us why or what's going on in those neighborhoods. So we're starting to dig really deep into certain census tract areas to understand why children are vulnerable and in certain domains of readiness, so that the interventions, the investment, and the action are really tied to the root causes from those communities and what they see happening with their young children. For our organization as Cradle to Career Collective Impact, it's really established our organization with some extreme credibility for the community as a real resource for being able to bring the systems together, because we have the outcome data that a lot of folks are working to improve, and it's provided a platform to finally show the need, what the need is and where it exists the most, which was not available in our community before that. And a lot of our partners are beginning to ask where they can begin interventions, where they can test ideas of change and really start targeting resources and looking to us to share that information and help inform decisions in a way that hasn't happened before. And so we have great participation in the tool across our whole county. So now we're in a stage of just using it, sharing it as much as possible, creating some of those shared definitions and conversations, and starting to see individual action of early childhood partners, and still planning that systems-wide work using the EDI results to guide that. That's what I have.
Oh, that's great, Beth. Thank you. And you guys have moved so quickly with all this. I know you've just had your data not as long, but you know, just in terms of speed, you've really always amazed us because it's moving quickly there. It's really a credit to all of you. Great. Well, we have one last community, which is Pasadena, California. I'm really excited to have Crystal O'Grady. And I'm not sure, Chris, did you have also Dr. Go with you, or will just be primarily you presenting today?
It'll just be primarily me, but Dr. Go is on the phone. So hi, Dr. Go. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris O'Grady. I am the Early Childhood Coordinator for the Office of the Young Child for the City of Pasadena. Pasadena has been really supportive of the well-being and health of their young children. And 1989 was actually the first year that they passed a citywide policy on the health and well-being of children. And they had the first administration of the EDI in 2012 and 2013. And from those results, the city leaders really realized that they needed to really implement resources and supports for kindergarten readiness throughout the city. And this was really driven by a group of volunteers and some commissioners on the Human Services Commission. And they worked through for a whole year through the Human Services Commission on an ad hoc committee, and brought in a consultant and worked with various city staff to diligently update an early childhood care policy. And they adopted the early childhood development policy in March of 2015. And from this policy, the Office of the Young Child was born, and that's where I sit now. And they decided to house the Office of the Young Child in the Pasadena Public Library System because it's the city department that hosts the Office of the Young Child, and it has libraries and museums, can improve early learning outcomes, increase school readiness, and help all children, especially those most at risk. And the Pasadena Public Library has had story times and has worked with Caltech and Pacific Oaks, a college really that's a leader in early childhood care and education over the last couple of decades, to implement their story times. And from the administration of the EDI in 2012, 2013, and through the Office of the Young Child, they realized that they wanted to track the outcomes for kindergarten readiness throughout the city, and worked to administer the EDI again in 2016 and 2017. And the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment Project was launched. Can we move to the next slide? So I wanted to give an overview of the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment Project. In November 2016 through February 2017, they had entering Pasadena Unified School District kindergartners assess using the EDI. And in 2017, the EDI results were released. What we found in the second administration of the EDI is that kindergarten readiness dropped from 54% to 51%, so that's 3 percentage points. We realized that we needed to have community conversations about what this really meant within the community and within families. So through January through June 2018, we held a series of EDI conversations with various stakeholders in the community, and community members decided to launch the Early Childhood Hub Network. We began Hub Network planning in July 2018, and we are still in the process of those hub planning meetings, and we've launched an All Children Thrive Pasadena. We are focusing on 2 areas, one of which is kindergarten readiness and the other is oral health. So there is a lot of community engagement around this issue. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about who our partners are in this work. We are approaching kindergarten readiness with a collective impact model. As you can see, K Readiness, that's where the Office of the Young Child sits. We really see ourselves as the backbone of some of this work and partnered with the Pasadena Public Health Department as well and the Maternal Infant Child Health Program. But Pasadena Unified School District is also a huge partner in this, and our parents and caregivers, they're really our hub connection and who we're aiming to connect with these early childhood hub sites, as well as our service providers. There are hub agencies and city departments that are working with them. So our WIC programs, our housing and HUD programs, and other service providers in the city that are focused on birth to 5 programs. Because we've had so many community partnerships that were really engaged in this process, we were able to use the EDI results to really start that collective action planning in 2016 and 2017 that laid the groundwork for where we are right now. The City of Pasadena, the school district, and the UCLA Center for Healthier Children and Families really formed a collaboration around these results to present the EDI results in these EDI conversations. We had 61 of the teachers that participated in the EDI administration participate in these conversations, and we had at least one representative, 19 of the Pasadena Unified School District schools show up at these, and we also had a lot of principals come and people in upper management to say what their reactions were with the EDI results, if they were surprised by them or not, or what they were seeing in their communities. It's really important that the Pasadena Unified School District was a really vital partner in this work because they're so present in the community. And community perception of the school district has been challenging over the last couple of years. They've definitely faced a decline in enrollment, so their funding has been impacted by that. And if we're really going to talk about kindergarten readiness in the community, the city has to be a partner and a proponent of the school district, and they need to feel heard with us. 1,254 kindergarten children were involved in the 2016 and 2017 administration of the EDI, and to better represent the results for our community and what that looked like within Pasadena, the results were geomapped to neighborhoods to aid in the community action planning process. Although the city of Pasadena is small, there is a lot of diversity in the way that the city is mapped out and different resources in the city. So it was important to have these on a map. And I mention that as well because it leads into another challenge that we have, is that there's a perception that the majority of the students and entering kindergartners in Pasadena go to private school, which isn't true. And you can see from the map that the majority of the entering kindergartners actually do attend the public schools with PUSD. Okay. So here's just a picture of some of the EDI conversations that we've had with the preschool teachers and the kindergarten readiness conversation. The teachers were really involved in this process in action planning and telling us what they saw within the EDI administration and what they hope to see, and also what the relationships were between preschool and Head Start providers with the school district, where they were at now and where they were hoping to go, which really helped frame where we wanted to move in our action planning conversations. So from these action planning conversations and the EDI conversations, we established this early childhood hub network. We have had 5 sites that have agreed to be early childhood hubs within the city. This area of the city was chosen because it's where 44% of all children aged 0 to 5 live, and it's where the most vulnerabilities on the most EDI domains were when you looked at the city map. So we partnered with Pacific Clinic's Early Head Start, Chap Care, which is a medical clinic in the area, library branch with Pinteresta, a community center called Villa Park, and another contracted preschool provider called Families Forward through Head Start. And our hub networks right now are in the planning phase. I actually have a meeting with them this afternoon. And a lot of the community agencies are donating their time in kind because they are so dedicated to improving kindergarten readiness for children and families and really see the need. In addition to our hub network, we also launched the All Children Thrive Pasadena, and that was on January 17th. So we're really at the beginning phases of this, and we brought over 40 stakeholders that are involved in issues that touch kindergarten readiness in the community to a strategic planning session. And as you can see right here, this is a community systems map that we made. So we identified stakeholders in the community and who our inner core was, what are some of the socioeconomic trends and education trends that we see in the community, and what are unmet needs, and to really just get an assessment of where our community stands in terms of kindergarten readiness right now and where we want to move forward. And we're using this, and we use this community systems map to then create a crossing the gap map, which is the next slide. And we used an outside facilitator to walk us through this visual facilitation because it was a really unique and fun way to get community stakeholders in a room and excited about tackling this issue and developing these 4 strategies that they're going to use to address kindergarten readiness in Pasadena. The 4 that they have identified are to support parents and caregivers, increase quality early education, increase systems integration, and build capacity for collective impact. And we are in the midst of working with those over 40 stakeholders in the community to address those strategies and really map them out. And I know it feels like an unfinished product, but the role of community work is that you're continuously engaged with stakeholders and working on what pooled collective funding for these strategies will look like. Overall, it has been a really exciting process. The Office of the Young Child has been able to partner with the Pasadena Public Health Department on the Early Childhood Development Policy and the Community Health Improvement Plan to identify metrics to assess kindergarten readiness in the community. And we've had a lot of community agencies and parents and caregivers really take the lead on some of the strategies and identifying resources in the community to move this work forward.
Thank you so much, Chris.
That
heard from the past. I'll turn it to you, Neal. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have about 10 more minutes, and I wanted to make sure we can take some questions and comments, but I think what you've been able to see is how the EDI has been used to engage and activate communities and support collective impact, build credibility for initiatives, drive accountability, and lead to a whole set of innovative strategies that are emerging in each one of these places to move forward. And these many of the sites are now linked together in a learning community that we're running so that places can share their information with each other and move forward. And in the future, one of the webinar series will be talking more about All Children Thrive as a vehicle to sort of organize this work and move it forward. But let me open it up for anyone that has questions or comments.
You can enter questions and comments via the chat and I can read them out loud, or you can use the raise hand function and I can unmute you as well.
Are there any questions?
Well, just to start us off, we did have a few questions come up during the presentation, so I'll just start with those. One is, are we going to have access to the PowerPoint? And so yes, we will be providing PowerPoints as well as a recording of this webinar back to our attendees and registrants. And then next question after that would be, why was there a big jump, or why did we see a big jump in 2014 and 15 by Stephen Cook? And then Lisa helped answer this question, so I can share that with you. We had somewhat of a big jump at that time because we had a state level expansion of the EDI with the Texas Home Visiting Project. So in those years, we were able to use the EDI in 19 counties using federal home visiting resources.
And that was a really interesting way in which the home visiting program and the EDI came together, and we're interested in other places, sort of exploring whether that's a possibility to spread and scale EDI in their states and move forward. Other questions or comments? And we can come from the panelists also.
Yeah. There was a follow-up to that that said, has the EDI been used with home visiting programs like Parents as Teachers or Nursing Family Partnership? And I think Casey had a good response to that, so can hand it off to Casey for that.
Sure, yeah, so we've used it in a lot of our home visiting programs, and we currently have a MIGV grant that has both NFP and Parents as Teachers, but in several different ways. So we use the tool to take into the home to parents to show parents what it looks like around even their neighborhoods or potential neighborhoods where they're going to be taking their kids to school eventually. We use it to have conversations really early on about the importance of early childhood education and developmental milestones. And we talk about all 5 of the domains and how crucial the social and emotional piece really is, along with physical health and well-being, and then communication language that parents expect. So we also have used the data to overlay our direct program service areas and outreach areas. So it's really interesting when you overlay where you're doing outreach and then where you enroll programs to make sure that that's similar, but then we always, every year we find surprising pockets of areas of high need that we're either not outreaching in or we're not serving that we really should be. So it's a great way for us to then have that conversation with the parent educators and say, why aren't we going to these neighborhoods? Have you guys even tried? What is it looking like when you do? There really are some families in these areas that need some extra supports that we may not think of. And so that's been a really great conversation starter. And as a United Way, that's great for us because we're looking to serve the whole county. So to be able to show there are pockets everywhere is just really helpful when you pull this data.
Great, thank you very much. That really great feedback on that. Other questions or comments? Anybody on the webinar who's thinking about doing the EDI and have questions?
We did get another question from Carol Gilbert around how have you, the representativeness. So how do you know that individual data is representative of the population in the area for which you're reporting? School level may be obvious, but neighborhood level maybe not so obvious to her. And I think Ephraim has some points that could speak to this.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, there are a number of checks to see if the data are representative of the population. So the first is to ground truth. We ground truth the results with the communities in which we're working. The second is to compare the demographic or socioeconomic characteristics of the EDI cohort with the larger kindergarten population at the neighborhood level. But this presents some problems since race and ethnicity nor income level are reliable enough to predict outcomes at the neighborhood level. The third is based off of the relationship between the EDI cohort and the size of the kindergarten population in the neighborhood. So we've run a number of statistical tests to assess the variance in random samples from the EDI cohort. I know it's kind of geeky or technical, but hopefully you guys can stick with me here. We looked at to see at which point the random sample size affected the variance in the results. And those thresholds varied based on the size of the neighborhood. So smaller neighborhoods require a higher threshold, meaning that we need a minimum of 70% of the kids living in a neighborhood, while larger neighborhoods required lower thresholds, down to 20% for neighborhoods with kindergarten populations of 200 or more. In our efforts, however, we use a combination of the first and the third that I provided, but I'm sure there are multiple other ones that you all can think of.
And one thing just to add, that so that it, in some of the data is presented at the census tract level, oftentimes the data is actually aggregated at the neighborhood level rather than census tract, where the neighborhoods are actually defined by the people in those neighborhoods so that the data can be used to activate the neighborhood in a community-wide kind of an approach. I'm looking at the time and I see that we have only a couple minutes and we want to be respectful of people's time. And so we're coming to the end of this webinar. I want to thank all of the presenters for really terrific presentations. And we could have had 8 other sites present from, you know, with equally interesting information because the innovation and creativity that's going on in these places is really astounding. So thanks to all the presenters once again. We will have another webinar on March 5th. The March 5th webinar will be presented by Sharon Goldfeld, who's been leading the effort in Australia. The EDI is done on all 293,000 kindergartners in Australia, and it's actually become the currency for Australia, this coin of the realm for early childhood, and they have lots of really interesting experience and learning from what that has gone on. So I would encourage all of you who are on today to join us on March 5th. And then in May, we're going to shift from the EDI to the MDI and talk about how the MDI is being used mostly in Canada right now, but we're starting to use the MDI in several pilot sites here in California, and that should be very interesting as well. This webinar series will continue into August, and please stay tuned because we'll be updating the dates and the webinars as we move forward. So thanks again to everyone for participating today, and we hope you'll join us next time. So that's it, and over and out from UCLA. Thanks.